Welcome to Gone Outdoors. Kyle Agre and Scott Brewer of Brewer Agre Outdoors. Talking hunting, talking fishing, and talking anything you can do outdoors for the next hour on Kello News Talk, 1320 AM, 107.9 FM, and KWSN, 1230 AM, 98.1 FM, both out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and the mighty 790 KFGO Fargo, 104.7 FM. Today's Gone Outdoors is brought to you by Ray's Sport and Marine, your local Lund Boats and Bennington pontoon dealer in Moorhead. RaysMarineMoorhead.com. Adventure RV across from the fairgrounds in West Fargo, your number one RV dealer in the FM area, AdventureRVSales.com. Devil's Lake Tourism, looking for wide open spaces, amazing fishing, and a refreshing escape? Discover Devil's Lake, where adventure, relaxation, and North Dakota hospitality come together. Book your stay today at devilslakend.com. Strand Ace Hardware, Barnesville and downtown Pelican Rapids, proudly family-owned for 70 years. Legacy Truck Gear, protecting your legacy and your equipment. And Onyx Fish Midwest, cast beyond the familiar. Scott, it is great, and it is awesome having, I would say, March weather in February, right? As we were talking about that off air, and it's really nice to have a little bit of a February thaw here after a really, really brutal cold snap not too long ago.
It sure is. The beautiful thing about this February weather in March is a lot of people are getting outdoors. They're doing some things that they normally wouldn't be doing right now. And some of them are just doing more of what they would normally be doing. And I don't know about you, Kyle, but I'm actually starting to get the itch to tap some maple trees because with this weather, I know the big run isn't going to be until a little bit later, but man, it sure is tempting.
Yeah, we're maybe a month away, 3 weeks to a month away from the big run hitting, but I'm feeling the same thing. And interestingly enough, we're not alone because on my social media feed, I'm seeing the Facebook groups related to maple syruping in Minnesota and their surrounding areas are getting active again. And people are talking, and everybody, I think, is kind of having that same mindset. Like, is this it? Is it time? Are we ready? Or no, it's going to get cold again. Have your patience.
Yep. And I highly recommend that if you are at all interested in tapping some maple trees, reach out to us. You could probably search maple syrup on KFGO website, and I would assume some of our podcasts would pop up because we try and do at least one each year. Or stay tuned because we will probably do another one again yet this spring. And depending on this weather, it might be sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it might be. I'm trusting we're going to get more winter coming our way, and this is just a temporary, kind of one of those false springs that we get.
I prefer to be optimistic.
Well, so would I. I got more ice fishing to do, and so do you. We've got a trip to Lake Winnipeg in March, and we've got some stuff to do yet before we totally give up on the whole winter thing, and that's all right. This is part of what we do here, Gone Outdoors. If you go back and listen to our shows, Scott and I are talking all the time about the changing seasons. And the beauty of living in the upper Midwest is that we've got a ton of things to do. And about the time you might have a chance to think about getting bored with one season, it's already changing into the next.
Yeah, and like we say also a lot of the time is that once you start a new hobby, you realize that you don't know what you don't know because there's just so much stuff. You might think, oh, this is super easy. Until you start doing it, then you realize that there's a lot of little minor things that make it better, make it go easier. That's one of the issues with the seasons changing is by the time you just start to get stuff dialed in, the season's over. Then you got to wait till next year.
Yep.
And hope that you're not old like us and you can still remember what you learned the year before.
Isn't that the truth? And Scott, the Battle Lake Area Sporting Club has their annual ice fishing derby out on West Battle Lake. This is going to run from noon until 3 o'clock next Saturday, February 21st. And super cool event. Scott, you and I have been there, and You go to the east end of the lake at the access on the east end. They have roads plowed if we get snow. They have a whole big area for people to walk around, mix and mingle, or concentrate on your fishing, whatever it is. There's a kids event this year that's going to be a part of it. So a lot of things coming up in the outdoor world. And hey, FM Walleyes is having their annual meeting. We just encourage folks this next week. We're going to talk next segment with Josh Nehk, and we'll do some previewing of that meeting that FM Walleyes is going to be holding. They're going to be electing their some of the members of the board of directors. If you're interested in helping out, and Scott, I would encourage people to help out and volunteer and get involved. And I just got to take a couple of minutes here to just recognize that it's not just about serving time working for an organization. It's about giving back. It's about developing relationships. It's about developing friendships. It's about things that really matter. And these organizations bring people together. The outdoors brings people together. I've had a lot of time this last week to reflect. Lost a really good friend, Clark Emery, who has been a guest on Gone Outdoors. And being at his prayer service, being at the funeral, one thing that came through so loud and clear, he may not have been involved in FM Walleyes or some of the things you and I are, Scott, but he was heavily involved in the FM Dog Obedience School and the North Dakota Retriever Club, and gave and donated countless hours to help other people really chase their passion in the outdoors with their hunting dogs and their pets. And you just think about the number of people that were there that knew him because of those affiliations through clubs and organizations. I think about the friendship you and I have, and we wouldn't be sitting here talking outdoors on Gone Outdoors if it wouldn't be for the fact that we both decided to take our boats out to a Walleyes or Us fishing league some 25 years ago. These things, they are great, and I don't want to see them be lost in our world of electronics and virtual social media.
Yep, same. And we're talking about FM Walleyes, we're talking about Muskies Inc., Cass County Wildlife Club, Clay County Pheasants Forever, the retriever clubs that you mentioned. There's countless different clubs for whatever your outdoor passion is. And all we ask is that you think about maybe getting involved, because I know that they would love it and they need your help. And Kyle, before we finish up here, I would like to say happy Valentine's Day to my beautiful bride, because if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be able to do the things that we do.
Amen. It is Valentine's Day today, and we should all be thankful for that special person in our life. There's no doubt about it. Absolutely. And we're going to have a number of special people in a different way on our show today. We're going to have Josh Nehk, the Minnesota Experience. He's going to be featured at FM Walleyes this week. He's the speaker, and he's a good one. We'll hear a little bit of a preview from Josh coming up. Pat Kalmerton's going to talk a little bit about Devil's Lake. Many of us think of Devil's Lake in the wintertime. We think about perch, we think about walleyes, but he's going to fill us in on a little bit of a secret up there. And maybe it's not a secret to everybody, but trophy pike fishing on Devil's Lake. We'll wrap up today with Jason Rylander. He is well known as a burbot expert, an eel pout angler. And he's going to talk a little bit about why right now is when we can start getting out chasing those burbot on lakes around the region. Folks, don't go away. It's going to be a great one. We do have to take a break, but we'll be back with more Gone Outdoors.
Looking for somewhere to get all your fishing information in one place? Onyx Fish Midwest has something for you. Search for new fishing areas with filtering features such as species abundance, trophy potential, lake survey info, regulations, and area insights are just a click away.
Getting to your target lake has never been easier with access points and public land ownership clearly marked on Onyx Fish. Mark and customize waypoints and weather for your exact location. Use code BA Outdoors to get 20% off Onyx Fish Midwest at onyxmaps.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Gone Outdoor Radio. You're listening on Kello News Talk or KWSN in Sioux Falls or KFGO, the mighty 790 in Fargo Moorhead. Scotty Brewer, Kyle Agre of Brewer Agre Outdoors. And on this segment, we are going to head out to western Minnesota, chat with Josh Nehk of the Minnesota Experience. Josh is a guide in Otter Tail County, and he's going to be coming to the Fargo-Moorhead area here later this week. So let's find out what he's going to talk about. How you doing, Josh?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We are doing great. You know, with this weather we've been having, how can you not be doing great with, I mean, if you're into any outdoor stuff, it's perfect time to get out and enjoy the outdoors. So, Josh, you are guiding in Otter Tail County, summer and winter. You're also going to be speaking at FM Walleyes this Thursday night, February 19th at the Ramada Inn in Fargo, which we do want to stress it is free and open to the public. So as a guide, you need to be an expert at scouting.
Yep, absolutely. I feel like that's, especially in the summertime, I mean, I feel like I do more scouting than I actually do fishing, especially if I'm by myself. So it's a really big deal to me.
Well, how do you scout so much in the wintertime? I'm assuming you use technology to your advantage. When, let's say you got a guide trip tomorrow and they're looking for walleyes and you're not sure they want to go to a lake that you haven't been on, how are you going to break down that lake really quick?
A lot of times I'm trying to fish a lot of the same 2 to 3 lakes so that I can keep tabs on different groups of fish and what they're doing. And especially in the wintertime, as we all know, it's hard to just go looking for them. So I generally have an idea of where they've been and where they've been running at. And then I'll take into account if the trip's in the morning versus in the afternoon. And I'll go out there and I'll check these spots, and I'm literally drilling 1 to 5 holes, swooping around with forward-facing sonar, checking the fish, checking bait fish just for life, a lot of times too, depending on the lake, and then moving on to the next spot. And then I'm taking notes as I'm going through my milk runs, knowing that, you know, I can maybe only go to 1 to 2 spots depending on the weather, especially in the wintertime. What's looking the best, and I'm going after, you know, off of my scout the day before or the day before that, to predict what we're going to do that day.
So have you noticed that, and this is a question that can help any angler, let's say they got a cabin on a lake and they've found a nice school of fish and they go out and catch a couple of them. Do those fish, do they stay together? You know, because a lot of times we'll go out, catch a school of fish, and you blow up the school, so to speak. Everybody's heard that term. Do those fish then get back together, or do they scatter and then you can't find them again?
I think a lot of times, like if you're talking about walleyes, it seems to me that they'll, unless you really disturb them, they'll stay running on the same paths. Until, you know, the underwater world makes them change versus us on top of the ice. Crappies, obviously, when you're going out and you're drilling on them and you're putting lines down and running on top of the ice and what have you, they do break apart. But I've found a lot of times when you check on them 2-3 days later, they'll school back up tight again together, you know, until again the underwater world tells them, you know, it's time to leave. We got to go here.
So, Josh, you do a lot of walleye fishing, and you do a lot of pan fishing too. Let's talk about walleyes for a moment. Where are the walleyes going from where they're at now? Where are they going through the spring? And granted, there's a lot of Minnesota anglers that here in a few more weeks, they're not really going to care anymore because the season's closed. But we have a lot of listeners in North Dakota and South Dakota too, that season's open all year. So where are these fish at now? And everybody knows, or a lot of people know where they spawn, but how long is it going to take them to get from where they're at now until spawning time?
This is kind of, I think, depends a lot on just what lake you're talking about. And I'll just take Lake A and Lake B, for instance. Lake A is a lake with bigger flats on it. Let's just say most of the lake is 14 and under. And then Lake B is more of a deeper lake with weeds in it. Right now on Lake B, we're still finding those fish hanging out in the weeds, but, you know, they're also at night they're running breaks, that's 16, 17 feet on the weed edge, that type of stuff. We've kind of seen more of a transition shallower for some reason in the last week. I can't really tell you why. Maybe it's because we're losing our snow and that sunlight. I don't know. But on Lake A lot of times during the winter now, especially this year, we've really been finding those fish that are still hanging up really shallow, actually, 14 and under, feet of water. And I think as we kind of transition towards spring, a lot of guys would think, well, they're going to start moving towards their spawning grounds. Well, they can make that switch in my head in a day, especially in our smaller lakes. So I think it is more determined on what the body of water looks like and what they have for weeds and bait fish. But right now, like I said, if you're fishing a deeper lake, we're still finding them, on the breaks, pulling up into the weeds. And if you're fishing more of a shallow style lake, they're still sitting up shallow in those feeding spots.
Hey, Josh, you said something there that really piqued my interest. You said Lake A and Lake B. Do you classify lakes like that all the time by the depth and by the type of a lake so that they're similar?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I always do my homework before I go on a lake, and especially because, being in Otter Tail County, I get to have so many lakes to pick on, and they're so different. Even if they're connected, they're so different. So I've gotten to spend a lot of time on a few of these lakes where I get to watch them progress, and all of a sudden it's been a year. I've got to do that over the past few years and be out there every day. So I take that anytime I go to a new lake, I look at it, how deep is it? How shallow is it? Does it have big flats on it? Is most of the lake under 14 feet, or is most of it, over 20 feet? And a lot of times you can find a lot of those similarities and within other lakes that you have fished.
That is great information and a really key for people to develop their own strategies based on kind of the foundation you described. Josh, I know you're going to talk in a lot of detail on Thursday, and for our listeners, I'd encourage, come on out and bring your questions, because that's what these types of events are for, is to be able to be interactive with people and find out, how what Josh is talking about applies to the lake you like to fish. But Josh, one quick thing before we have to wrap up our segment, and that is any big modifications or things that you really find are just key pieces on your boat as far as gear for having a good scouting outing and making sure you know what's happening in that body of water.
I get asked that a lot of times when I'm on a guide trip, because I run a tiller boat. So, customers, they get to see the back of my boat. They get to see the screens. And I honestly could not go without my mapping and my side scan. I could be super fast and efficient, especially in the summertime with my side imaging, because I have it so dialed in and I can see things so much faster on there and go so much faster through a lake versus, looking at just forward facing sonar. So I would say if I could just pick two, that map and that side scan is I would struggle to give them up.
All right, listeners, if you want to find out more about this conversation and hear more from Josh, he's going to be at FM Walleyes Thursday night, free and open to the public. It starts at 7 o'clock. Stop out. We would love to have you. Josh, we really appreciate you coming on Gone Outdoors.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, guys.
Stick around. We'll be back with more Gone Outdoors after this short break.
Experience unrivaled power with the Ion Alpha Ice Auger. Choose from the Steel Bit Alpha or the Ultralight Alpha Plus.
Available in 1 or 2 battery configurations, the 8-inch model cuts an incredible 1,200 inches of ice on a single charge, blazing through at 3.4 inches per second. The 10-inch model drills 1,200 inches at 2.2 inches per second. It's called the Alpha for a reason.
Find yours at your local retailer or visit ioniceaugers.com. Welcome back to the second half of this morning's Gone Outdoors. Kyle Agre and Scott Brewer of Brewer Agre Outdoors, talking hunting, talking fishing, and talking anything you can do outdoors here on Kello News Talk and KWSN in Sioux Falls and the mighty 790 KFGO Fargo. We're excited to welcome Pat Kalmerton to Gone Outdoors. Pat is with Devil's Lake Tourism, one of our show sponsors that we're certainly appreciative of. And, you know, a lot of times people think of Devil's Lake in the winter, and the first thing that comes to mind is walleyes and perch. But we're going to take a little different turn in the road this morning. Pat, welcome to Gone Outdoors.
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. How are we doing today?
We are doing fantastic. You know, we're talking about fishing, talking about all the outdoor stuff, and outside of actually being out there doing it, it's about the best thing I can imagine. So things are pretty darn good. We're going to talk about Devil's Lake, and you're just the guy to do that. How has winter been so far up there in north central North Dakota?
You know, quite honestly, the winter has been fantastic. The perch the perch bite has been a little bit tough, but the walleyes and the pike and white bass and everything else they've certainly come to play. Not only that, but we're starting to see a couple of crappies. And, it's one of them things where usually you think about Devil's Lake and all you think about is perch. But I'm telling you what, these other fish that actually pull a little bit harder are keeping us a lot busier this year. So it's been a pleasant surprise, if you will.
Well, and that's what I wanted to focus on this morning is, lots of us know about the perch and the walleye, but there's some of these other species, I mean, in particular, some of the trophy pike opportunities up there on Devil's Lake, I think are underrated in terms of what people recognize. And tell us just a little bit about the pike fishery there on Devil's Lake. What can people expect if they go out and target those big, long green predators?
Yeah, most certainly. Biggest thing that you can expect is going to lose baits. It's one of them things where these things got teeth. They're big. They're mean. They swim like a bat out of hell. It's one of them things where when you hook into them, you could be in anywhere from a foot to 9 foot. That's kind of where we've been concentrating on. So, we've been up in the shallower waters, and we're using a lot of the hook setting devices that once they hit, they set it, and all you see that rod just do is buckle over, and those drags are just screaming, and it's awesome because it kind of takes you back into the summertime, right? When I'm a salmon fisher by heart from, years and years over in Wisconsin chasing salmon. And when those dipsies, they buckle over and those fish are just screaming the other way, that's exactly what these pike are doing. It's one of them things where they are hitting the baits, and it doesn't matter what bait you're using, to be honest with you. We've been using anywhere from the frozen sardines and smelt and stuff like that you're finding at the bait shops, to dead sticking minnows while you're walleye fishing, to ripping, anything as far as, scoot to the side and make some noise, ripping wraps and things like that under the ice. And these things are just coming up, T-boning them, smoking them, and just making the real scream. And it has been, honestly, anybody that knows me knows that I've always been known for my tip-up fishing, my pike fishing. I go after the big toothy critters, and I've definitely been in heaven out there this year because the numbers are back. They're back with a vengeance. A couple of years that we've had some numbers that weren't very conducive for a lot of running, right? I don't think they disappeared. I just don't know if it was the water conditions or what was going on. But this year, man, they're right back where we expect them to be, and they are. I'm talking 15, 20, 25 flags a day, and it's just been crazy. We've had a couple of pike over 40. The fishery itself is a lot of that mid-30s, low 30s, mid-30s. A lot of hammer handles too. So it's one of those things where it's exciting to see, and it's a blast. The women, the children, the guys, the men. You can go from the most feminine to the most masculine, and everybody loves to go after them.
Pat, you guys up at Devil's Lake, or actually all of North Dakota, you guys have an advantage where you can run 4 lines. And if you're talking tip-ups, if you're talking iFish Pros, that kind of thing, you can set out 3 of those per person and still run around jigging that rattle bait or whatever you want. So you guys have a huge advantage so that you can kind of do it all at once, and you can cover a lot of ground. You had said that 1 foot to 9 foot, there is a lot of water in Devil's Lake that is 1 foot to 9 foot. Can you be a little bit more specific as we get a little bit later here into the winter? Are we looking for spawning grounds, or are we looking for running water? What kind of areas are we looking for?
Yeah, right now we're all on the edge of the weeds. So it's one of those where, if prime example is I was right out in 6 Mile, and the 6 Mile Bay has been really, really active on pike right now, and it's right on the shelf. It doesn't matter if you're on the north side of the bay to the south side of the bay. We're from the Channel A down to the bridge, right? So you find those plateaus. In what we like to do, or like what I like to do, is I back those that bait fish into a corner, right? It's a lot easier for a pike or anything that's on the hunt to effectively hunt down their prey if there's a wall behind them. So I look for big ledges, and I go halfway down that ledge, and maybe there's a little plateau in there, and that's where these pike are just going to be roaming. And it's a lot easier catching a bait if they go, right or left, because they can't go away from you. There's a rock wall there, right? It's just like if you're walking through the woods and there's a big cliff right there. So that's what I like to look at for this time of year. Now, moving forward, I'm looking for moving water. I'm looking for spawning grounds. I'm going to look for anywhere that there's a creek that's coming into the lake. I'm going to be looking for anywhere around bridges where you're going to have that moving water, but yet I'm never going to be probably more than 15 feet from this point to the open water. And even when I get into the open water, man, there's hundreds of miles of rock that I can stand on and pike fish all year long, because there is no closed season out there. So that's a benefit about it. And, not only that, but you're going to get surprised with that giant walleye that's pushing 30 sometimes, that early spring. The other thing that you're going to do is when you're up and you're searching for these pike, obviously everything spawns at the same time, right? So you're looking at your pike, you're looking at your walleyes, you're looking at your perch, you're looking at everything in the same grounds, and you hit it spot on. When you can run 4 lines a person, you can be jigging for perch, you can be jigging for walleyes, you can run a couple of tip-ups, you can run those tip-ups for those perch and walleyes and accidentally catch those pike. I mean, the advantage of Devil's Lake is you never know what you're going to get, but you can certainly get a trophy fish no matter where you're fishing on the lake. I mean, there's people off of Graham's Island catching 30-inch walleyes, just last weekend and this weekend. I mean, they are a dime a dozen out there as well. So the more that this season goes on and the later it gets, when you're up in those shallows and you're fishing those pike, do not be surprised when all of a sudden you're going to get a personal best walleye in there, or even a perch. I mean, they're 2-pound perch is what we're known for, right? And just because the numbers are down don't mean they're gone.
That is awesome. Pat, Kalmerton, Devil's Lake Tourism. And Pat, you had me when you said there's a chance at that 40-inch mark pike, and what a thrill to be able to get that. Now, we're up against the clock here. I want to make sure you have a chance to direct people, because I'm ready to call up there and get a room reserved and come up and chase these big toothy critters. But how do folks find out what's available in terms of lodging, accommodations, and all the stuff you have to offer in Devil's Lake?
Yeah, go right over to the website, visit Devil's Lake, North Dakota. You can go to our Facebook, Instagram, YouTube channel, all that other good stuff. If you get into the webpage of Visit Devil's Lake, North Dakota, it'll have all the guides there. It'll have all the lodging, all the accommodations. But I'm telling you what, you can't go wrong out in Devil's Lake.
Pat, thanks for spending some time with us and getting us fired up about Devil's Lake. We appreciate it.
You betcha, fellas. Good luck out there, and be safe when the ice starts going.
Folks, absolutely. Great words there. And we're going to have more words coming up. We have to take a quick break now, but don't go away. We'll be back with more Gone Outdoors.
The all-new Eskimo Outbreak XDP shelter gives you the same great fishable space as the original Outbreak, but packs down up to a foot shorter for easier transport.
Available in multiple sizes, the XDP features dual heat ports, giant windows, and an oversized carry bag. Whether you're camping for the weekend or fishing for the afternoon, the Outbreak XDP has everything you need for an enjoyable time on the ice.
Check out the all-new Outbreak XDP at geteskimo.com. Hey everybody, welcome back to Gone Outdoor Radio. You're listening on Kello News Talk or KWSN in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, or the mighty 790 in Fargo, Moorhead, and surrounding communities. Scotty Brewer, Kyle Agre, Brewer Agre Outdoors. And in this segment, we are going to chat with our Gone Outdoors burbot expert, Jason Rylander. Jason, did you know that you're our burbot expert?
Well, I didn't till now, but I'm honored.
I think if anybody knows anything about burbot, they know who Jason Rylander is. That's my thoughts, but we're going to help people understand a little bit more about burbot and about Jason. So burbot have many, many names. A lot of people, probably the two most common are burbot and eel pout. If you don't know what a burbot is, we're talking about eel pout. If you don't know what that is, well, then you got to keep listening because we're going to keep going. Jason, seasonal timing, when is the best time? Actually, right now we know is the best time to target them. But why is that? Why are people targeting eel pout right now in February?
They are pre-spawn right now. I always have said for the many years I've fished them. I mean, you could catch them all winter, but I feel like Valentine's Day is about the real kickoff to my eel pout season, and where it's about a month-long sacrifice sleep, stay out late, and go chase those slimy, beautiful fish.
Let's talk a little bit before that and after that. Then we'll talk during that month-long period. So, like you said, people can catch them a little bit before, and I'm sure a little bit after that, as you know, now you're talking late ice. Are they in the same areas or just not as many, or are they in transition to their spawning grounds?
They're just living life, feeding and doing eel pout burbot things. The big reason for the big push February to March is they're just congregated. So instead of catching one or two, or maybe a good night you catch 4 or 5. You know, I've had nights where it's 70 fish for 80 fish for the group. Yeah, come spawn when you really dial in those fish moving and coming into these spawning areas. They are hungry and grouped up, and you can set a lot of hooks in an evening.
You know, that sounds like a whole lot of fun. And my next question is, how do we do it? So Jason, can you just give us like some beginner's tips, right? If we've, some of us and our listeners who maybe haven't done it much or even at all, what do we need to have to be geared up to chase burbot? Is there any special equipment, gear, things like that we need to have that we're bringing onto the ice?
Yeah. We'll start at the rod end. I'm using like a light lake trout rod. In fact, my favorite is Tuned Up Customs Vulcan, that red one. You guys are probably familiar with that. I like the fiberglass because you have an opportunity to catch a pretty big fish. So you want to be geared up for it. I mean, I would say your average 3 pounds-ish, but you know, it's not shocking to catch a 10-pounder, 10-plus pound fish. So you want to have a nice heavy rod. I typically will just run heavy mono with 10, 12 pound mono. And then business end, something heavy, something glowy, something glowy. Important on the glow. As far as bait goes, whatever you can find. My preferred bait is golden shiners. Sometimes those are tricky to find towards the end of February, early March. But, I'll cut up some sucker minnows. I've experimented using shrimp. I've ordered, because their main forage is crayfish. I've actually fished with crayfish. If I can get golden shiners, that's my favorite.
All right, Jason. So what kind of depths are we talking about? Depths and locations. I believe traditionally you're going to be a little bit deeper, but when they're spawning, what kind of depths are they spawning at? And is it on points? Is it in inside corners? Is it on breaks or just big flats? What kind of areas are anglers looking for?
Well, you're going to want to key on hard bottom. I think just the way eelpout look, like the first thing everybody thinks of, that looks like a fish that lives in the mud. Well, not necessarily. They do prefer hard bottom because that's where the crayfish are. They like that hard bottom, and that's what they're going to spawn on. You're looking for rocky, preferably gravelly. If it is a shoreline break, if it's a mid-lake hump that comes up to anywhere from 10 to 20 feet, they'll spawn in. I've seen them spawning on live scope in 20 plus feet of water. So I know that a 20-foot hump is going to hold some fish to attract them. But hard bottom, key next to deep water, because obviously during the day these fish are hanging out in deep water, and I've caught them in depths over 50 feet of water, 60 feet of water. I've dropped cameras down on Cass Lake in clear water and seen them in 100 feet of water. I don't target them that deep of water because barotrauma is a thing. Even for eelpout, it seems to be a little less thing. I would say on average, you asked about depth, pre-spawn, I like 30-ish feet. I mean, just general, every lake's obviously a little bit different, but I would say that 28 to 30 foot is usually my starting point. And then as they start spawning, really get into the spawn, they start biting bird during the day, and then I'm going up on top of that structure or just a little bit shallower.
All right, Jason. So we got about 30 seconds left. I want you to give us your best tip on conservation for burbot. How do we conserve burbot and why? Well,
I worked with some folks at Linder Media. I worked with the DNR, and we were able to establish a limit here in Minnesota finally of 4 fish, which is phenomenal. But the big thing is you got to treat it just like you would if you were walleye fishing. What kind of walleyes do you keep? The smaller ones, right? I say for eelpout, that smaller one that you want to eat is 3 to 5 pounds. They're going to have the best meat, and anything bigger than that's typically going to be a female. Let that thing go because their spawning success isn't that great. They're spawning under the ice. Their eggs take 4 weeks, sometimes longer, to hatch. That's a long time for a little egg to lay on the bottom and not get eaten by something. So the more eggs they can lay, the more eelpout we'll have to catch.
That's perfect. Jason, we really appreciate you coming on Gone Outdoors, talking about eelpout with us right here in the heart or at the start of the eelpout run. How can our listeners find you if they have any questions? Where can they reach out?
I am on Facebook, just Jason Rylander. I am on Instagram. I fished with Jason. That's probably the best way to reach out.
Perfect. Thanks for coming on Gone Outdoors. We really appreciate it.
Love you guys. Thank you.
Special thanks to our Gone Outdoors show sponsors, Ray Sport Marine, Adventure RV, Devil's Lake Tourism, Legacy Truck Gear, Strand Ace Hardware, Outdoor Adventure Foundation, Onyx Fish Midwest, and the Ion Alpha. Thank you for tuning in to Gone Outdoors. Follow along when you're on the ice or in the field with Gone Outdoor Podcast. KFGO.com, KWSN.com, KELO.com, Apple Podcasts, or on Spotify. Visit us at breweragreoutdoors.com anytime or on social media. Until next week, from Scotty and Kyle, we will be Gone Outdoors.